Welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into arcade history where monsters, gore and body horror ruled the gaming cabinets. These weren't cute ghosts or funny zombies. Many of these games turned heads, shocked parents and pushed the limits of what arcades could show. Before we jump in, make sure you like the video and subscribe to support the channel.
The House of the Dead.
The House of the Dead series. The House of the Dead games became very famous in arcades. Players used light guns to shoot zombies and strange monsters that jumped out from every corner. The games mixed fast shooting with sudden scares, so arcades felt like tiny horror movie theatres. The enemies were wild and weird. Bodies stretched, faces melted, bugs crawled out of places you don't want to think about, and some bosses looked like someone gave a kitchen blender a mind of its own. The story was easy to understand. Mad scientists made strange creatures, and everything went wrong. Each new game added different monsters. There were zombies with swords, giant leeches, frog-like mutants, and even a boss that looked like an old corpse shooting lasers. The games stood out because they showed more blood and gore than most arcade machines. Arms flew off, organs exploded, and the screen shook with red splashes. Parents didn't always like it, but teenagers happily lined up with their tokens. The games were fast and exciting, though some of them had very silly voice acting. Many players still joke about the cheesy lines. But even with the goofy moments, the House of the Dead kept getting better and inspired other shooters like Resident Evil, The Umbrella Chronicles. Splatterhouse. Splatterhouse was basically a giant monster movie inside a cabinet. You play as Rick, a guy wearing a creepy mask that looks suspiciously like a certain movie villain's mask. You know, the one with the hockey stick. Rick punches and kicks his way through demons, mutants, possessed furniture, floating guts, and slimy blobs. The story revolves around rescuing Rick's girlfriend Jennifer from a haunted mansion. The mansion acted like it wanted you dead. Everything in the place had teeth. Even the chairs felt like they were planning something. The game crossed boundaries because it didn't hide the violence. At the time, many arcade games were colourful or kid-friendly. Splatterhouse walked in, dropped a pile of guts on the floor, and asked players if they were brave enough to continue. The controls were simple, and smashing monsters felt great, but some levels were tough. Many players remember wanting to snap the joystick during boss battles. Still, the game became a big cult hit and inspired sequels and a remake. Splatterhouse created a template for gory action in games long before mature ratings became normal. Chiller. Chiller is one of the most disturbing arcade games ever made. In this rail shooter, the player shoots at torture chambers filled with trapped victims. That already made people uncomfortable, especially in the 80s. Instead of shooting monsters, the game showed humans being hurt in horrible ways. Limbs flew off, heads burst, and bones snapped. The game had creepy sound effects, like screams and cracking bones, which made the violence feel harsher. Chiller crossed boundaries because it wasn't pretending to be a spooky adventure. It leaned into pure shock value. Some arcade operators refused to install it. Others hid it behind curtains or in back corners. Even today, gamers debate whether the game was designed to be edgy horror or just offensive for attention. Either way, it pushed gaming censorship to the limit and was banned in multiple places. The gameplay was simple and repetitive, but players mainly talked about it because of the shock factor. Many players remember trying it once, saying, "Okay, that was gross," and never touching it again. Chiller became famous for controversy rather than fun. Still, it is a strange piece of arcade history that showed how far horror games could go. Carnival. Carnival took the idea of a spooky carnival and turned it into a nightmare filled with killer clowns, zombies, mutants, and undead circus freaks. The cabinet itself looked like something from a haunted funhouse, and the game was packed with dark humour. Players got to shoot exploding heads, fight giant zombie magicians, and dodge creepy laughing dolls that ran at the screen. The game's monsters were cartoonish, but also deeply unsettling. Some clowns had jaws that opened like snakes. Some zombies were half-rotted and missing pieces. The game did not shy away from blood, guts, and exaggerated violence. Each level felt like a horror ride at a twisted fair. The music and announcer added a goofy energy, making the game feel like a Halloween party full of danger. Some players found it hilarious, others found it horrifying. The game was fast and fun, but it also had cheap enemy attacks that could steal your tokens quickly. Still, it became one of the most memorable arcade horror shooters of the 90s and is still requested for a modern remake or re-release. Many horror fans consider it a classic. Beast Busters. Beast Busters was a zombie shooter with machine gun controllers instead of pistols. Players blasted through cities full of undead soldiers, giant mutant animals, and shape-shifting monsters. Some enemies looked like corpses stitched together. Others were dog-like creatures with too many teeth. The game tossed explosions, bullets, blood, and chaos onto the screen constantly. This game crossed boundaries because it pushed the zombie theme before zombie shooters became common. Some cabinets even had recoil in the guns, so every shot felt powerful. The levels felt like action movies mixed with horror science fiction. You played as a soldier trying to stop a strange outbreak. Beastbusters was fun with friends, but the graphics were rough even for the time. Many players remember the animation looking weird, but the chaos made up for it. The sound effects were loud and satisfying. The game became influential and even inspired later games like The Typing of the Dead. Recently, retro collectors rediscovered Beastbusters and enjoy the strange creativity behind its monster designs. Space Gun. Space Gun mixed horror with science fiction. Instead of zombies in haunted houses, players were astronauts blasting aliens on a space station. These aliens had sharp limbs, dripping jaws, and creepy insect eyes. Some enemies popped out of vent shafts. Others crawled on ceilings or burst out of exploding eggs. The monsters had goo instead of blood, but the body horror design still made players cringe. The game used plastic rifles as controllers, making players feel like space soldiers. Many fans enjoyed how enemies lost body parts when shot. Tentacles snapped, alien heads popped, and creatures fell apart. The game crossed boundaries because it mixed realistic violence with sci-fi design. It was like someone watched the movie Aliens and said, "Let's make it a shooter game." One fun detail is that you could rescue survivors in the station. Saving people gave rewards, which encouraged players to shoot carefully. The game had fun action, but some levels dragged on. It also liked to throw enemies at you non-stop, leading to token-draining difficulty. Still, Space Gun became a memorable part of arcade history because it turned outer space into a horror zone. Xenophobe. Xenophobe once again puts players inside space bases overrun by alien parasites. The alien creatures look slimy, spiky, worm-like, and sometimes like infected humans. The game let up to 3 players join at once, with each person moving through different rooms on the same screen. Everyone had to hunt aliens, rescue items, and escape before the whole facility blew up. The body horror came from the parasites attaching to characters, popping out of eggs, and crawling over machinery. Some enemies had weird stretching bodies and glowing mouths. Back in the 80s, this level of monster design shocked some players. Players also used science fiction weapons like ray guns and grenades. The controls were clunky and characters moved slowly, but players loved exploring strange rooms and blasting gross aliens. The game later appeared on consoles, so it became a cult favourite. Even though the graphics look simple today, the creepy atmosphere helped it stand out from other arcade games of its time. Night Slashers. Night Slashers is a beat-em-up game where players fight monsters using martial arts, punches, kicks, and magical powers. The heroes battled zombies, vampires, werewolves, demons, and giant stitched-together creatures. Every punch sent blood and body parts flying across the screen. Some zombies got sliced in half. Some bosses melted or burst like rotten fruit. The game crossed boundaries because it mixed classic arcade brawling with heavy gore. Most beat-em-ups had gang members or robots. Night Slashers threw in undead monsters that kept crawling after losing limbs. The main characters shouted dramatic moves and used flashy special attacks. One hero even carried a metal arm that smashed enemies into paste. On the positive side, players loved the fast gameplay and big combos. The monster designs were creative and different from the usual arcade enemies. On the negative side, the game could feel unfair because enemies attacked from all sides. Some bosses took forever to defeat. Still, it became a cult classic. Many fans still ask for a modern remake.
Power up.
Altered Beast. Altered Beast lets players control a warrior who transforms into monsters. In each level, you collect spirit orbs and shift into forms like a werewolf, dragon, or tiger mutant. Every transformation gave new powers, such as lightning punches or fire blasts. The main story is about a hero rising from the grave to rescue a goddess. The game starts with the famous line, "Rise from your grave." The monstrous part comes from the transformations. Muscles explode outward, bones bulge, and the character mutates in front of the screen. When you defeat enemies, their bodies sometimes tear apart or dissolve into goo. The boss creatures also look freaky, including giant eyeball monsters and huge head-spitting demons. The game had booming sound effects and loud voice lines, which made it unforgettable. Some players feel the gameplay is stiff today, and the difficulty is uneven. Still, Altered Beast became a legendary arcade game and stayed popular through console ports. Its monster transformations remain some of the most iconic moments in 80s arcade history. Haunted Castle. Haunted Castle is a dark action game where a brave knight travels through cursed areas full of skeletons, angry ghosts, giant bats, and bloody monsters. Many fans consider it a spin-off of Castlevania because it shares the same gothic horror style. You walk through burning towns, creepy graveyards, and haunted castles filled with things that want to eat you. The body horror elements appear in the enemies. Some skeletons crack apart, zombies lose limbs, and bosses ooze or spit strange liquids. The difficulty was brutal. One mistake could cost a life fast. Many players said the game stole their tokens like a greedy vampire. Still, the atmosphere looked amazing for the time. The music sounded dramatic and scary, and the backgrounds were detailed. Many players loved the boss designs, especially the giant skeleton warrior and the hideous Frankenstein creature. The controls were rough, but people still talk about it today because of its intense horror style. The game proved that arcade titles could be spooky, serious, and visually bold. Zombie Revenge. Zombie Revenge took survival horror from the House of the Dead universe and turned it into a beat-em-up shooter. Players fought zombies using guns, chainsaws, fists, and martial arts. The game mixed realistic gore with silly action. Some zombies crawled even after losing legs. Some burst into green goo, and some transformed into bone-covered monsters. The story includes secret labs, mutant experiments, demon-like creatures, and a villain who acts like a mad scientist. Many enemies explode into chunks when hit, which made the game feel over the top. Zombie Revenge crossed boundaries by mixing arcade shooting with hand-to-hand combat. It also added giant boss fights, such as huge worms made of corpses and bioengineered beasts. The gameplay was fun, but chaotic. The difficulty could jump suddenly, especially during boss battles. Some voice acting sounded silly, but players enjoyed it because the whole game felt like a wild horror action movie. Zombie Revenge remains a fan favourite and is remembered for its crazy weapons and messed up monsters. Wardner or Demon's World? Wardner, also known as Demon's World, looks cute at first, but the game quickly shows its nightmare personality. The story follows a young boy and girl sucked into a cursed world filled with ghosts, demons, floating heads, and creepy dolls. The characters look cartoonish, but the enemy designs are unsettling. Some monsters have stretched faces, eyeless skulls, or giant fangs. The game plays like a platformer with magic attacks. You fight witches, zombie armies, and giant bosses made of bones or fire. Wardner crossed boundaries because it disguised horror inside a cartoon world. The cheerful art made the creepy moments feel surprising. Many younger players thought it was a friendly fantasy game, until a demon jumped out and tried to chew on them. The gameplay was fun but challenging. The character moved slowly, so dodging enemies took patience. Some levels needed precise jumps, which cost many tokens. Still, the game became a cult favourite because of its strange mix of cute and creepy. Wardner proved that body horror does not need to be realistic to be disturbing. Marvellous verdict. These arcade games brought monsters, gore, slime, and body horror into loud, glowing cabinets all over the world. Some became classics, some became controversies, and some simply made players scream and laugh at the same time. If you enjoyed this video and want more horror gaming history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and stay spooky.